Hey Rizzo, and welcome to My Only Friends. On today's episode, I sit down with Shelly Cole. You may know her as Madeline from Chilton on one of my top comfort shows, Gilmore Girls. Shelly is the most raw and authentic guest I've had so far. She does not shy away from anything. Her vulnerability and honesty made for an incredibly impactful conversation. This episode reminds me of the Friends episode, the one with the birthing video. Phoebe brings Joey a dog after he's been dealing with depression. She knows spending a day with the happiest dog will be sure to cheer him up. Shelly has a service dog, the love of her life, Monkey, who is always there for her to get her through her hardest times. In this episode, we do talk about suicide, drug use, and abuse. So if these are triggering topics for you, please use your discretion. I hope you enjoy and learn something from my conversation with Shelly Cole. How are you? It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Shelly.
It's nice to meet you. I'm Brittany. And you are actually like the first person I'll be interviewing who I actually have not met or know in person.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Eris Alvarado. I did an episode with him, and afterwards he was like, Shelly would be perfect for this. And just sent the info over.
I've been pretty vocal about mental health and, you know, my struggle. And my father was bipolar 1, which was a very, very, probably the greatest challenge of my life. And so I don't know where we're going with all of this right now, but I'm just going to take reins. Really. Yeah,
we could jump right in. I mean, when Eris had referred you to me, he told me that you had a book called Blue Highways. Yeah. And
I happened to just have a copy of it sitting here because I was trying to get the ISBN number off of it. Oh,
yeah. And I was reading this last night and throughout the week and this morning, and just like picking up on a lot of different things that resonated with me also. And I mean, I had so many thoughts. First, I want to know all about your dog, Monkey.
Hold on.
Do I get to meet him? Or is it her?
Our little bubba's.
Hi, baby.
Whenever she feels like stirring, I'll pull her up and in my lap. Aww. She's everywhere with me. She goes everywhere. She's getting up there. She's 13 and a half. So I definitely am trying to enjoy every moment I can with her. We also substitute teach in the public school during when they do CMAS testing, which is, I don't know what it stands for, but like Colorado, like mass testing, it's language arts and math. So they do that many times, like 6 times a year. And whenever that happens, which is actually coming up this Thursday and Friday, she and I go to this one particular school and love spending time there. And we're of most use. Generally speaking, we either camp out at a table in the 6th grade hallway in front of the workroom where all the classes, surround. And so should somebody need a moment, a timeout, there's an autistic child there that is very volatile and needs sensory breaks every, calculated amounts of time. And so whenever that happens, whenever we're in the building, we make sure to let them know. And then, somebody says, Liam is really struggling. I mean, this is a really stressful time to test. It's like a very stressful thing to do these tests. So we're there for that reason. And they come and they sit and they hold her. And sometimes we proctor this one boy who's autistic and really struggles with his testing and likes to speed through them really quickly. So we've kind of formulated a method to make him slow down. It's a 4-hour test and really likes to speed through it in about a half an hour. And we've created this really great system where we, like, every 10 minutes, we bounce a dodgeball back and forth 50 times exactly. He likes to be the even numbers. And then I sit with him next to him in his eye line with Monkey, and we encourage him every few minutes. And he tends to take a lot more time, which is amazing. And he's raised 2 grade levels since the beginning of the year.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
Well, that's amazing work from you. And also like dogs are just the gift to the earth. I mean, I have 2 Cocker Spaniels, Lila and Maxie, and I truly I've talked about it before on here. Like my mental health is the best when I'm with them. And I feel like I don't need to be anywhere else in the world. I don't even look at my phone when I'm around them because I just want to take in every moment. And they just turned 14. So, it's one of those things like they're in, knock on wood, completely amazing health. And I just cherish every single second I get with them because they truly have, like, in my worst moments, I will sit there in this little hallway and because they're back home with my parents, and I'll sit in the hallway and Lila will just come up and we'll just sit there and hold each other. And there's nothing else in the world that makes me like feel like, okay, I need to stay, like this is where my heart is. And just reminds me that like these dogs need me just as much as I need them. With that being said, it reminded me of, you talk about in your book, Blue Highways, about having your own little corner of the world. And I absolutely loved that. And I actually wrote down how you said, being alone is my constant. It's been my friend and my nemesis all my life. And how you kind of carved this little corner of the world out for yourself.
And it's not hate or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, she's such a huge part of it. And it's not a complete corner, but it's more anything I want is to complete it. But like you were saying with your hallway, it's my closet, and where I go, I have this really beautiful kind of large antique ottoman bench, something like that is upholstered in this beautiful fabric that my friend did. And I sit up on there and I pull my feet up so that, the sharks can't get them. And I pull Monkey up onto there on my lap, and we just sit. And it's not like I have this giant closet, but it's large enough and small enough that it feels like a womb.
Yeah. It's those little places that you create for yourself to feel less alone. And I love that also in the book you had wrote, alone means something different now. Because, to go from the beginning, if you're willing to talk about it, of course, you had a really difficult and confusing upbringing. And you had
the word confusing because I haven't really put it in that term before, but it is confusing to have that life and to feel like this is all there is. This is what life is supposed to be. And what of this is my fault? And what of this? It's really hard to know as a child that any of it isn't my fault, especially having a mother who hated me and who was always wanting to like punish me emotionally and physically and verbally. And I think it's impossible for a little kid to not take the bait, to have that thought process of this isn't my fault. This is because she's in so much pain herself. Those are 2 profound ideas to have as a little girl and to be able to process that, I think.
Right. Absolutely. How are you supposed to know as a little girl what's going on? And you don't know anything else is like normal. Like you don't know that this isn't normal, what's happening to you inside your home. And you don't know that like there is a way out and then, you got out of the situation with your mother and your stepfather, and then you moved in with your dad, and then you essentially kind of became the parent in that situation. So did you feel, I'm sure you felt like you got robbed of your childhood a little bit there.
As I've grown older, I know that is not an ideal situation for a child to grow up and to be able to create their own self-esteem and their own sense of strength to go out into the world and create what they want to create. And without having any grandparents or aunts or uncles or cousins, no extended family, just that horrible brother of mine who hasn't been in my universe in many, 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 many years. So I think as I got in my 20s and early 30s, I really struggled, as I think most people do, to figure out who they are, whether they come from, I don't know, like a wholesome, 2.5 kids, and family, or if they come from, far worse than what I lived through.
Mm-hmm.
We all struggle with that letting go of childhood and becoming adult, and what that's like, and will I survive, and how will I survive, and the sense of it's not fair. I'm not sure how much of it's not fair I really experienced or acknowledged or allowed myself to feel, but I definitely have felt absolute loneliness. Just absolute. One particular time that I had to put my father in, this is far long before Monkey. One particular time I had to put my father into the mental hospital against his will. He called me and he was a really manic high. And I don't know how much you know about manic depression, but especially bipolar 1, which is the most extreme version of bipolar. He was on a manic high, and they love it. They love that feeling. Can't speak for all of them, but that's typically what they go through. They love that high. And for me to take that away from him and put him in a hospital, he called me collect, and I answered, and he just lit into me. And he'd never said horrible words like that to me before. And I knew that they weren't true. And I knew that he didn't really mean them. But what was so painful was just to hear that. I finally just hung up on him, and I crawled into my closet on the floor, and I just convulsively cried for, I can't even remember how long. And I wasn't just crying for me. I was crying for him, because it hurt so much to know that I was causing him so much pain, and he couldn't comprehend. I don't know that he ever really truly comprehended how much pain I was in. Right. I was living with a roommate at the time, and she was also sort of my best friend. And she comes in there and she says, "Hey, everything okay?" And I'm, no, it's not. And she goes, "Okay, well, Rob asked me to go out to dinner, so I'm going to go." And I'm like, "Okay."
Right.
Oh. Like, great timing. And I was just, that sort of loneliness. It's hard for me to talk about this really without becoming, because, I'm an actress and I'm a teacher and I'm highly emotional. And it's really hard to go back and talk about this, because everything is so visceral for me. And I remember it so well, like skin deep, and it's hard, but loneliness is something that I think that was the part of the unfairness that I've felt in my life, feeling like, why me? Why don't I get to have a mommy and a daddy and, a grandmother? Why don't I get to have some place to go? And even my roommate my best friend is walking out the door when she knows that I need her so much right now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's the struggle, is that loneliness.
Yeah. I feel like the heartbreak for you on a level, because I've experienced that extreme loneliness, and I don't know what it is. I always it's like this horrible pain in my heart and in my right hand. And it's so weird how that happens. I'll feel like my hand hurts, and it's like this aching loneliness. And when something triggers it and you feel that alone, even though I do have people I can go to, I do have my mom and my dad and my grandparents and my best friend, it still feels like, even though I have them, they would never understand that feeling. Yeah. And I always find that, when people are struggling and I know that they feel alone, I'm like, I hate that I know what that feels like. And I know that there's very little I can do that would probably help them besides just be in their presence and keep repeating, like, you're not alone. You're not alone. And I find too, and I don't know if this is something that you've worked on, is like talking to my inner child every day is something that I've been doing lately.
So before I got Monkey, I'm going to let you finish, and then I'm going to tell you what I was going to say.
Oh my gosh, you have Jack? Wait, I'm going to go get something because I wanted to talk to you about this. I have these two guys.
Oh, hi, buddy.
So before we get into that, I was feeling in the last couple of weeks too of, you get excluded from things, or a friend says something that hurts your feelings and you don't get the invite to something, or little things that would trigger my younger self being like, I'm the problem. Everybody is upset because of me. Nobody likes me, having all those feelings again. And I did this exercise where I just held my hand on my heart and my other hand on my stomach, and I held myself, and I envisioned myself talking to little Brittany, like in who I am today, and talking to little Brittany and just letting her know, like, I got you. Don't worry. You are okay. And you'll always be okay because you have me. And just kind of, when you had said being alone means something different now, it was like, yeah, I totally felt that, because I remember when I was a little girl telling my uncle, like, do you ever feel like you just want to go home even though you're home? And not realizing that, like, home is a feeling within your heart. And I, for so long, was looking for things outside of me to make me feel like home, and, go out here and be with this person and be in that relationship, and constantly chasing this feeling of home, until I worked on myself so much that I'm home all the time now, and like just reminding myself that. So I guess that was my long-winded question of asking if you talk to younger Shelly all the time, like, hey, look, I'm here for you. Like, you have me now.
I do it in a sense of, so this is, as you know, this is Jack. Hey, buddy. And I've had Jack only since I was about 22 years old. Mm-hmm. A long time, because I'm 51 now. And I got Jack for that purpose of having someone to hold, the little girl in me, mm-hmm. And endowing Jack with what I wish for and what I want someone to do for me, mm-hmm. hold me and tell me everything's going to be okay, because when you grow up with just constant chaos and are surrounded by abuse and violence and verbal and mental, not just towards me, but towards each other, fistfights and all of this horrible, drunken, angry behavior, I'd hide away so that I would be out of they'd always somehow snare me back in. But growing up with just constant chaos and coming to realize as an adult that really what I want more than anything is just to be rocked, told everything is okay. Everything is okay. Everything is okay. And I need to hear it 3 times. I don't know why that's a magic number for me, but it's good enough for electric company. But it is my favorite number anyway. But I got Jack and have Jack for that purpose. And Jack went with me to the West Covina County mental facility, which was, I thank God that and I say this in the book, I thank God that somehow my really good Blue Cross, insurance slipped through the cracks. And instead of going to like Cedars-Sinai, mm-hmm. You live in Los Angeles, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, mm-hmm. I spent the night in the emergency room on a gurney, and then they picked me up and drove me to freaking West Covina in 5 o'clock traffic and an ambulance. And thank God I had the wherewithal to take Jack with me before I left my house. And I tell that story from his point of view. And I have a really good friend who's a writer, not just a writer, but he's a publisher, Akashic Books, and more edgy stuff. And I sent it to him and I said, hey, I'd love for you to take a read here. Tell me what you think. And he said, I loved it. One of my favorite sentences was being his daughter was, I can't remember the exact word, but being my father's daughter was like a profound and like painful and beautiful job. But I tell that chapter, that story, and I have a whole 45-minute like monologue. Basically, I could perform on stage from Jack's point of view, but
I love that.
He plays different characters, but he said that's the only thing I might change is changing that voice away from Jack, because it brings an adolescence to the story. And I said, well, respectfully, that's exactly what I want it to convey.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sense of fear and that sense of innocence from a little child's point of view, because that was a terrifying experience. And the reason I thank God that I didn't get it put into Cedars-Sinai, sitting under a tree and reading a book, la, 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 is because I left there and they wanted to keep me beyond the 72-hour, 3-day hold.
Mm-hmm.
I was not going for it. I didn't take a single pill. They tried to give me Klonopin or sleeping pills. I'm like, nope, I'm not taking a single thing. I am like as focused as I can be, because I'm getting the fuck out of here. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, can I say the F word?
Oh yeah. You're fine.
So anyway, at that end of that 3 days, I walked out of there and I just said, I will never let myself fall so far again, ever.
Right.
And I haven't. I fall. Believe me, I fall, but not that far. And I never fall again. So yeah, Jack is kind of like my inner child. And Monkey is kind of in a sense as well. The way I take care of her and the way she takes care of me, she's made all the difference in my life, every difference. And I know that on the day that I have to say goodbye, that's going to be the hardest thing I've ever will or ever, have had to do.
Yeah.
Thankfully, her doctor says that she's in great shape. He is so hot, her doctor.
Set me up.
He's here. Dr. Ross Henderson. He's the singing vet. I don't know if you've ever seen YouTube of Dr. Ross, the singing vet. Anyway, that's him. He plays. Well,
I'm going to look him up now. That's for sure.
Well, he has 2 children now. He's married.
Oh, bummer.
Very happy. And, he said, Shelly, on that day, I will come to you.
Aww.
Whenever she has to have like a little procedure or anything like that, I get full VIP treatment. He says, come on back. You're going to hold her. I'm with her the whole time.
Yeah. Dogs are, I know it's like, getting a dog, it's inevitable, but nothing prepares you. But Monkey is, I just love that you have that love in your life, because I talk to my therapist or my friends who I'm really close to, and they go like, why do you think you always just want to be around your dogs? Like, I know dogs are better than people, but it's like, I feel that unconditional love from them. There's no judgment. They're never going to disappoint me. And they feel the same about me. They're just, waking up to somebody or this being that's so happy to see you. And just like, you never have to wonder, do they love me? Like, it's so very clear. But yeah, this is my Elmo doll. I've had him since I was 2.
I can see that.
Yeah, he's almost been through it. He doesn't even have eyes anymore.
Daddy.
I know. And then this one's Stormy. And my uncle, who I actually was just talking about when I told him, like, do you ever feel like you want to be home? He gave me this when I was 3. And I do the same thing. I hold on when I feel that horrible loneliness. I grab both of them and I just hold on to them and I rock back and forth like a little kid in my room again. But also, like, I love that you do that too, because I'm always like, am I ever, like, I'm going to be 32 next month and I'm still with my Elmo and my Stormy. And there's I don't know if there's a scene from Cheers where Diane has Sam over for the first time and she's like, give me a minute. And like, he thinks she's freshening up, but she's really hiding all her stuffed animals.
Oh my God. I can't remember that far back, but of course that's.
Yeah. I'm like, yep, that's going to be me all the time with Elmo and Stormy.
Well, did you ever see, since TV is kind of one of the.
Yeah.
Point of this, I just thought it reminds when you talked about Diane Shelley Long. One of my favorite shows is Modern Family.
So good.
And I've seen every episode multiple times. We watch a couple of episodes every night before we go to bed, just as a way to ease, sleep. And I love her on that show. God, she plays such a total cuckoo bird.
Mm-hmm. I just love that her and Ed O'Neill are the parents, like two very iconic sitcom actors as the parents on there. And the episode when she passes away and Gloria thinks that she's haunting her throughout the whole episode. That's so funny. Oh my God, it's so good.
And Craig T. Nelson passed on that role,
which is so wild because I am watching Parenthood right now and he's in that and he's amazing. And I'm in the last season and like I've seen it already. So I'm preparing myself. But I mean, he would have, I don't know.
I can't imagine anybody else in that role. And that other guy, the guy on Modern Family that plays Gil Thorpe?
Gil Thorpe, yes.
He was actually the studio's first choice to play Phil, but the creators of the show said, no, it's this guy. And the studio just said, no,
wow.
He's not funny. And he goes, and so the creator of the show, Steve Levitan, said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. He set up some scenes with the other actors who had been cast and had Ty Burrell play Phil in those scenes. And Steven sent it to the producers, to the studio. And they said, we get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine anyone in that role.
I know. That's one of those shows where everybody is so perfectly cast, and I would marry Phil Dunphy tomorrow. I 100%. Him. Yes.
Marry him. Phil Dunphy.
Yes.
Phil. Not Ty Burrell, because I don't know Ty Burrell, but I would Phil Dunphy in a heartbeat.
Yes. He's so beautiful.
Like, he's sexy and goofy and funny and a nerd. I don't know how it works, but it just works.
Yeah. I love it so much. And one of my favorite, one that makes me cry every time I watch that show, Modern Family, is when Haley's dating an older guy and she thinks that Phil isn't going to go after her. And they're both in the elevator side by side. And he's like, that's my baby. I'm going after her. Yeah. And she just comes up from behind and gives him a hug. I am a puddle every single time. And then the one that makes me laugh so hard is when they're trying to plan the surprise birthday party for Mitch, and they're on the boat, and the guy from the boat is like, all these people. Cam. Oh, for Cam. Yes. Mitch is trying to plan it for Cam, and they're on the boat, and the guy is like, we can't get all these people up here. And Ed O'Neill is like, they're getting in a little rift, and he's like, okay, Grandpa. And Sofia Vergara punches him in the face and goes, nobody calls him Grandpa. And then Luke goes, I do. And
earlier in that episode, they were at the bar and watching soccer or something. And Ed O'Neill, Jay, sort of softens a fight between her and these other guys. And she's talking about how like, I thought you were going to punch them. She's like, somehow I feel it. You know what I mean? Anyway.
That's so funny.
I know. And realizing that Javier was such a freaking hothead that like, that's not the guy she wants to be with anymore.
Right. To go back a little bit, I wanted to ask you about Gilmore Girls. Reading this book and seeing that you had such a life going on of like, your childhood and moving. How did Gilmore Girls even come about? Like, when did you go to Los Angeles?
Yeah. I talk about in the book, how when I was in college, I think I was maybe in my like third year of college, and I was going nowhere. I was doing fine, like my grades, but I was doing a lot of crystal meth. My father was absolutely like the storm of bipolar was really, really, I mean, in retrospect, I know that he started having episodes long before that, but it was real and coming to terms and understanding it and by myself, trying to figure out this and how to manage him. And, God, it was so much. And I was coping by self-medicating. And finally, I just was coming down from this really particularly bad crystal trip and thinking, oh my God, I don't get out of Texas. I'm going to die here. Like not far away from now. And so I had a friend who didn't live in Texas, just one, and he lived in Seattle, and his name was Lance. He's since passed away from a drug overdose. I said, dude, can I just pack whatever I can on a plane and just leave everything behind and just come be there? And he goes, come on. And we stayed in one room together in a boarding house in two, twin beds. And on a whim, I don't know why, I just auditioned for this play. And they said, well, you got a call back. It was for a grifter. It was an ensemble piece for people, and to play the 16-year-old grifter girl. And they said, you got a call back. And I did the call back, and she called me immediately, and she said, I cannot give you this role. It's way too important. And I know you read this, but I'm retelling it.
Yeah.
This is way too important to me. This is my baby. So I've hired somebody from the Seattle Repertory Company, which was the big theater, like whatever that would be in Los Angeles. This was the big theater there. And I was devastated, just totally gutted. But after 5 days, she called me and she said, listen, I know that you're the right person for this job, and I'm going to ask you to come do this, and don't F it up. You've never memorized lines. You don't even have a freaking headshot and resume. And I was just over the freaking moon. It was a Friday, and rehearsal started on Monday. She fired the girl that she'd cast, and and I did this, and I was on stage, and I did this play, and realizing in that experience that, like, I was going to college for photography, and whatever. Just because I'm an artistic person, but I don't really know in what capacity. I didn't have any idea. I was just like wandering through life. And I knew then, and I did another play, and I knew Buried Child by Sam Shepard, which was an extraordinary experience. And I knew that if I was going to make a living at it, because obviously if you decided, well, I've decided this is what I'm going to do with my life, I have to make a living out of it. So I said, okay, I'll move to Los Angeles. And before I did that, I moved to Minneapolis for a few months for a guy. And then I went to Alaska for 6 months to wait tables to earn enough money. And then I went to LA, and I pounded the pavement. I eventually got myself an agent. After about a month at the agency of her sending me out on auditions, I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm not, and she's like, you just booked a national Nintendo commercial. What are you complaining about?
Yeah.
You are doing great. Keep up what you're doing. Everything's fine. Don't stress. And because I have really horrible abandonment issues. And so anyway, I mean, obviously. So anyway, she moved that agent from that very small agency to a much bigger boutique agency where I had her plus 2 other agents working for me. And they sent me out on the Gilmore Girls audition. And it was like, in a tiny little trailer where Amy Sherman Palladino, who's the creator of the show, and along with Dan, but it was just Amy and Mark Casey, one of the 2 casting directors. Jamie Rudowski was the other one. It was just Amy and Mara, and it was that scene in the bushes. Have you seen the show?
Oh, girl.
Okay, cool. So it was that scene in the bushes. Yes. It's like, I hate bugs, I hate nature, or whatever. And I did the thing, and it was just a co-star. I don't know if you know what a co-star is. A co-star is basically like a couple of lines. They don't take you that seriously. You're not like, you're at the end of the credits, you're not in the opening credits or anything like that. And I did that, and it was like one episode co-star. Maybe it'll recur. Who knows? And I was walking to my car, and I was out in the parking lot. I hadn't gotten very far, and Mara came out, and she said, Shelly, come back. Shelly, Amy wants you to do that scene again. Amy, go ahead, take it away. And Amy gave me some specific directions about what she wanted to see. And I did it. And then I got called that day later and said that I had booked that job, which nobody really knew the
magnitude of what that show would be.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I started to get an idea because they called me for a wardrobe fitting. They called me and Teal and Liza and Alexis, and we had to go to this seamstress. and get fitted for the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember specifically Amy wanted it to match Alexis's eyes. And so the four of us were there getting fitted for this uniform and for the school uniform, and which they had a bunch of them made for us, which, by the way, I got to keep mine. I took mine.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Brenda, here's a really good lesson for actors, in my opinion. First of all, never late. At the end of each day, I take my wardrobe because when you get to set every day, your wardrobe is sitting on a hanger in your trailer waiting for you. At the end of each day, some actors decide to leave it in a pile on the floor. Some actors maybe hang it back. I don't know. I put it back on its hanger and always walked it back to the wardrobe trailer and said, "Thank you very much for today." Always. And when it came to wardrobe fittings, one person who left it at the bottom of their trailer, on the floor. When it came to wardrobe fittings, they really didn't get much of a choice in anything they wore. Well, no, Amy chose that. You're wearing that.
Oh.
When I went to wardrobe fittings, for whenever we had stuff that was outside of
right,
I got so many choices, and it was always about like, oh, that one looks so cute. We could take it in on the sides a little bit and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I got to keep so much of my wardrobe because they really respected me as much as I paid respect towards them.
Right.
And I think that that's a really good thing as an actor is to know that I think a lot of actors feel like entitled.
Mm-hmm.
You're here because of me. And that's not it. We're all here together as a team working on something. And for God's sake, you have to be here a lot longer than I and way before me and way after me. And I don't want to make anybody's job harder. The Teamsters they work their butts off. The crew, the freaking everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So hard. I think actors have the least hard job of all.
Right.
That's why I always used to like to be my own stand-in most of the time. So that was my first job, and I didn't know what it was going to turn out to be. Nobody did. And then it turned into 35 episodes over the course of 3.5 years.
That's amazing. Well, when you say, have you watched Gilmore Girls? Gilmore Girls is like, so Friends is my number one.
I got that.
Gilmore Girls is number two. Like, I have seen Gilmore Girls all the way through. I think during like the quarantine alone, I watched it 3 times all the way through. Like it's my show, my depression show. Like my friends know like, oh, she's watching a lot of Gilmore Girls. She's not doing the best, but it's like one of those shows I can escape. I can feel something, but I don't have laughter all the time. So it's like, it's that show you go to just be. And, sometimes I watch it and I get so invested in the storyline that it like, I can't shake it off for the whole day. I'm like thinking about what Lorelai's doing all day long. And then sometimes I watch it from like just an actor's perspective and like study everybody and how fast everybody's talking. Or when I rewatch it and I hear different pop culture references, like I go back for that. And so that show is very special to me because again, like I got my appendix out. I was in bed with my dogs during COVID. All we did was watch Gilmore Girls. My parents have now ended up having to watch many episodes whenever I'm home because I'll turn it on again. And so, I mean, that show it's incredible and it's been around and it's finding new people over and over again. And it's just this giant comfort blanket that you could put on and then you don't always have to pay attention to it. You can have it on in the background and then all of a sudden you're getting sucked into it again. And I find when I watch it now as an adult, I have so many different opinions. Like I watched it for the first time in my 20s and now in my 30s, I'm like, I don't know. I'm switching all the teams for guys. I'm like, no, I'll probably get a lot of flack for this, but Christopher was a better fiance than Luke was. Luke was not great to Lorelai when they like were engaged. So it was like, and like, I loved when Luke and Lorelai were courting, like, and I'm a team Logan girl. I don't know who you were.
I'm team Dean, but not because of Dean. I'm team Jared. And I'll tell you why, but
yeah, well, no, if it's not going to be team Logan, it would be team Dean for me too. Cause
Well, I was at the first Gilmore Girls fan fest that I went to in Canada, Ontario. I was at this fan fest, and I was on stage doing a pan just between me and the girl, and I'm trying to remember her name, but she played the red-haired girl, Olivia Ork. So sorry, I feel bad. Olivia, but she played one of Rory's roommates, the red hair that she also played Jan Brady.
Yes. Oh, she played Cindy. Yes.
Anyway, so she and I were on stage doing a panel, and somebody asked me invariably, who are you team? Who are you for? And I said, and I'm team Jared Padalecki. And they said, what? Why? And I said, well, because since Gilmore Girls, he's gone on to obviously like CW's like number one hit show, running Supernatural. And during that time of his on Supernatural, he went through some fairly debilitating depression off and on, and really discovering his depression, and had to take breaks from production. Production had to shut down periodically here and there because of his depression. And instead of like, sheltering him and like hush hush, he talked about it, and he became a voice for mental illness. He became a voice for mental illness. And I think that is so important that we talk about mental illness, especially because when I was younger and my father began his long journey of bipolar, I didn't understand it, and nobody talked about it. Everything was just shrouded in shame. Depression was shrouded in shame. Now we have commercials for it, but I think young people, which I think I am an advocate for young people, and I am a mentor to a few, but I place a huge value on helping young people find their voice. As an acting coach, that's one of the biggest part of my job. And I think normalizing mental illness, mental health is, I think, a better way to say it. Normalizing mental health and that's part of it. Like mental illness, that's what I grew up with, and I think it's more important to be able to call it what it is. It's your state of mental health, and because it doesn't put like this just bad illness. You know what I mean? Yeah. And for people to talk about it openly and to normalize it so that young people can talk about how they feel, and then they don't feel so ashamed, I think is changing things, and it's very necessary.
Absolutely. And I mean, just how brave and vulnerable you are in your book, Blue Highways. It's like, I mean, and it's not a long book, but it's powerful. It's a shorter book, and they're short stories, but it is so impactful. And, I just commend you on the bravery and the vulnerability that you have. I mean, since we started talking, I felt like this huge energy coming from the screen alone, just like sitting here talking with you. I could feel everything that you're feeling, and just how open you are. It's very beautiful. And one of my questions was like, when you were on Gilmore Girls, were you aware of the accomplishment, or were you still fighting a lot in your everyday life? Or were you very present in that? Like, was that a good time in your life to reflect back on?
Well, when I think about it now, it's a great time in my life. Because when I think about it now, it's weird to me to think, this little girl, this beaten and bruised, emotionally and physically little girl who survived and continues to survive. And she got out, and she made a choice that a lot of people make, to go to LA and try to make something of myself. The working actor. I hate the idea of like, I want to move to LA and become a star.
Yeah.
I moved to LA to become a working actor, which is exactly what I did. And I found myself on a huge hit show that to this day continues to be relevant. And I think, how did I do that? I don't know how I did that. But when I decided that I just couldn't take it anymore and I didn't want to live there and do that anymore, I think a big turning point for me was in auditioning for NCIS, the role of Abby. And they really wanted me. And I remember on the day that I was supposed to basically sign on the dotted line, I had a major panic attack. My dad was still in Texas and dying, and I was going back and forth. And I had a major panic attack on the day I was supposed to sign on the dotted line. And I just said, no. And my agent said, come again? And I just said, no. I remember exactly where I was. I was in my car, and he told them that I said no. And the creator of the show, Don Belisario, called my agent and ripped him a new ass. And, does she have any idea, how many people want this job? And does she have any idea what this means? Yeah, this means that I would never have to worry for money the rest of my life. And I don't think anybody knew for sure it was going to be a hugely as successful as it was, but they knew since it was a spinoff of that other show, it was going to be successful for sure, especially, hiring Mark Harmon and Michael Weatherly. I don't know what it was, but I just knew that it wasn't, I didn't want it. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want that life. And I stuck around for a while longer, and I did some guest starring stuff even on that show, actually. And I love the work I did on that show as a guest star. And I did a movie that I'm really proud of, the Village Barbershop, that it's this tiny little film, but I won Outstanding Actress at the Newport Beach Film Festival. It's the only award I've ever won. And I'm really proud of it. But I always knew that I needed to find an exit strategy because I didn't want that life. I didn't truly want that life. And I'm not sure it's because I felt ultimately undeserving, like that entitlement thing. Well, not entitlement, but I deserve this.
Like imposter syndrome.
Yeah. I don't really know what it was ultimately, or if it was just I hated doing red carpet stuff. And I didn't mind doing interviews, but I really hated red carpet. And I hated the business of acting so much. And I just was looking for a way out. And I moved. I met up with a guy that I had known many years ago, and he lived here in Denver, and I moved here, and it was a very abusive relationship. And I finally got out of it. But I moved here with the intention of being an acting coach exclusively for children. And, it's one of those things that I decide I'm going to do something, and then I go do it, like being an actor or moving here and being an acting coach. And thank God all my classes are filled, and thank God that I have the opportunities that I have. And that show Gilmore Girls is the job that just keeps on giving. I mean, I was just out there doing Scott's podcast on the Warner Brothers lot on December 22nd. Stars Hollow, he invited, it was it was aired. Yeah. Filmed it, and there's 600 fans, and they invited me and Aris and Rose. And I think this is when Aris and I were talking about you in this podcast. And I said, I'd love to do that. And I know we've been around each other enough at these fan fests that we know each other's stories. And he definitely got the sense that, I'm pretty open about talking about. And I think he had read my book. And I think that's probably why he said, I think, probably a good fit for you to do. And it's a pleasure to be able to talk with you about all of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it is. And it's very surreal. And I think, that for me, Aris is a friend of mine who I've known for years now. And when I first met him, I was like, oh my gosh. And when I had him on here, I felt so embarrassed because I turned into such a fangirl, because we're friends, but I never have had that space to just blow up his spot about Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
And, you know, same, like when we first got on, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, again, little Brittany would be like, look at you. Like you're watching these people on TV and now you're getting to talk with them about the shows that you love and like, you know, your dreams and your fears and everything. And so I was thinking about it too. Like we think that because someone's on TV, they've quote unquote made it. But like, we don't know what's really going on in their life. We don't know, like they are going to a job and they're going home to Lord knows what afterwards. And who knows what's going on in their mind. And I think, like you said, when you normalize it, when you hear that Jared Padalecki or you have had these debilitating mental illnesses that you've had to learn how to cope with and overcome, you don't feel like, one, my dream's impossible, because I'm an actor also. And sometimes, you know, I'm like, if I can't even handle this, how am I ever going to be on a series regular if my mental health is this bad? But then when you hear these stories of people who were series regulars or recurring guest stars or recurring co-stars and still showing up for themselves and doing the job, you know, it's like Matthew Perry, you know, dealing with everything he dealt with. Or I know like Courtney Cox dealt with multiple miscarriages while she was on Friends and was doing a storyline about having a baby. And it's like, I think when we normalize those things, we realize that we're not as alone as we think we are. And just because you are on television doesn't mean all those problems have gone away somehow. You know, rewatching some of your scenes on Gilmore Girls after reading this book, I wanted to reach through there and hug Madeline and be like, oh my gosh, you poor girl. Like, it's okay. Like you don't have to be a mean girl, you know, like I wanted to sit there and give Madeline a therapy session because you look at it so differently. But then at the same time, it's a testament to who you are of like showing up for yourself and still following your dream despite the hardships that you've had to face.
That Amy had the kindness in her heart to turn Madeline around and let her be a girl that did have a really like a sweet, innocent heart. Like she was like an idiot savant, I think. But I was going to say in regards to, people have real problems. We all have real problems. I did this episode of NCIS, after the fact after I turned down the role of Abby. And we worked well into the night. And Michael Weatherly, who plays the hot detective, he and I were both going to Coachella. And it was a Friday night. And I had my last scene and where I had to like snort heroin out of my brother's dead, body because he was body packing heroin. And it's like, ugh.
Oh my God.
Anyway, I told the director, you got one. You get one.
Yeah.
It wasn't supposed to. We weren't. Anyway, that wasn't in the script. I'm like, you got one of these, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, so after that, like really late night of shooting, Michael and I were both going to Coachella, and he said, well, let me just drive you there. And I'll drop you off at your friend's house in Palm Springs. I said, awesome. So during that drive, we talked about me having turned down that role. And he was sort of beside himself. Wow, really? And he said, ultimately, I got to say, what you did changed someone else's life. Polly Perrette was in a terrible marriage, a really, really bad, abusive, just horrible marriage.
Wow.
Being cast in that show and being able to play that character and have strength and have the money and all of that, whatever comes with it, gave her the emotional strength to the power to get out of that relationship. And this was Michael telling me that. And he said, well, God bless you for turning it down, and God bless the universe for letting her have it because it saved her life. Wow.
That's wild. I mean, because it's so true. One, you never know who you're helping. And two, the universe always has your back, and it all works out the way it's supposed to at the end of the day. When you were growing up, was there a TV show that you watched that was that made you want to be an actor? Or did you really see in those times of feeling alone, was there a specific TV show where you were you saw yourself in a character?
Well, I didn't know I wanted to be an actor. I never knew that I wanted to be an actor. I'm trying to remember when Party of Five came out.
Definitely early 90s.
Well, okay. Yeah. Cause I wasn't in LA until about 1997. the end of 1997. But I'm trying to remember, when I was a kid, I watched those typical shows from the 70s and 80s, Love Boat and, Happy Days. And I really liked that. I really liked Family Ties was a show I really liked. And I liked The Cosby Show as well. But
I know. I loved watching The Cosby Show on Nick at Night when I was little.
But I really liked Family Ties. I looked forward to that show because I felt that it had just a wholesome family. And that was comedy. I watched so much stuff. My mother was a huge fan of Kung Fu, that show Kung Fu, but she was also a huge fan of those dubbed like Chinese Kung Fu movies. And she loved those like Destroy All Monsters, those weird like Japanese Godzilla films.
Yeah.
And I hated that shit at the time. I was all day Saturday. That's just that, and I know that's supposed to be cool.
Yeah.
But I just hated it. We spent Saturdays going to freaking Sam's Club, getting a giant like tin of drum tobacco and papers, and then kidney beans, raw kidney dried beans. And they'd have that on, and then be just pounding the drinks, cooking up the kidney beans, which we'd eat for a week, like with ketchup. And
oh my gosh.
and I would roll cigarettes for hours and hours.
Oh my goodness.
For them to like have cigarettes for the week.
Wow.
Freaking horrible. And I associate those cool shows with that.
Right.
So television was absolutely a respite for me, but I didn't have my own television, obviously. And having to watch television and with those meant I had to be with those people. It was just, I spent so much time alone. We were driving, we were doing this suicide awareness play that Stan Zimmerman wrote. He was one of the writers for Gilmore Girls, and he does these fan fests. And this past year, he wrote this play called Right Before I Go, and it's suicide notes, real suicide notes from Kurt Cobain, Virginia Woolf, Sheila in Seattle, who works as a transgender woman who, across the board. And we were touring with it on little towns in New England, like, Woodstock and New Hampshire and Delaware and stuff like that. And Virginia Madsen is Nick Holmes played Robert.
Yes.
He'd be a wonderful person to have on your podcast because he's such a he's one of the most generous I've ever met in my life.
He wrote a beautiful part of your book too.
He did. I don't know what I did to deserve that, but he's like my brother. Anyway, so Virginia and Nick and Stan and I and Devin were all piled in the car, and we were talking. I think some like I Can't Fight This Feeling by REO Speedwagon came on the radio, and I just was describing. Oh my God, this song reminds me of when I was a little girl, maybe, I don't know, the 6th grade or something. And just like laying splayed out on my back, on my bed with my arms spread out, just with tears just pouring down my face and into the blanket below, and crying and just listening to this song and how lonely I felt and and she says, God, that's pathetic. And then I go, yeah, I guess it is. She immediately felt horrible about saying that.
Yeah.
But she said, God, that's pathetic. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it is pathetic, but that was me, and I just think about that little girl. And I think about how she didn't have anybody to hold her.
Yeah.
And you talk about alone, and I think about that little girl and how alone she felt. And I wish that I could just go back and hold her and say, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay. Like knowing now, I don't like to live my life based on, hey, I wish I could go back and change that, or my life based on having regrets, because first of all, that's completely pointless. It can't change anything. But secondly, I think that the way we've lived our lives and the experiences that we've collected thus far in our life have brought us here.
Yeah.
This moment and that next moment and Monkey. And I don't want to change anything. I want to keep evolving and learning how to love and learning how to create. I've discovered now in my life that creating and taking care of people are the two most important values in my life. Bringing joy to people. And I was somewhere, someone didn't get my order right and she was having a bad day and I was having a bad day and the worst possible version of myself came out. I was there and she messed up, the company messed up my order. And I said, well, what can you do about it? I was really frustrated because I was having a bad day. And what can you do about it? And she said, well, I can get it fixed in 6 days. And I said, 6 days? 6 days. And she goes, yeah, that's all we can do. And we ended up getting in this argument, this yucky, nasty argument. And I just walked out of there. I stormed out of there and I got in my car and I drove a block and I just stopped. I pulled over and I turned around and I drove back and I parked and I walked in and I just said, listen, I don't know what kind of day you're having, but I'm having a really shit day. And I am so sorry of what I put on you. And I'm so sorry that I hurt you. And that I made whatever day you were having worse. It certainly made mine worse. And please accept my apology. And she just started crying and she came around the counter and she hugged me and she's like, oh my God, thank you so much. That my day is just so bad. And I'm so sorry I took it out on you. And thank you so much for coming back and saying something, because for goodness sake, I don't want to take it out on the next person. And I'm sure you don't either. And I really appreciate that. It gives me fuel to like proudly get through the rest of my day, because knowing there's people like you and me who can forgive. And I try really hard to acknowledge when people do something kind, and like in the grocery store, for instance, or something like that, because I think as a society, our knee-jerk reaction is to complain. Yeah. And to like point out, I mean, misery loves company, to point out when somebody's does something wrong or to shame. And I don't want to be one of those people, because that's what it is just paying the ugliness forward. Right.
I saw this quote or a video, I can't remember, where it basically was like, don't be the part of someone's story of that day, the bad part of their story, like, because everybody goes home and then they either come home to a partner or their parents or their friend, and they go, oh, and then this one girl was just such a bitch to me. And I never want somebody to go, I want somebody to go home and be like, oh, and then this really sweet girl, or like not even think of me at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuck with me.
If you found that quote, please send it to me.
Yeah, but it just like really stuck with me. Like, I was like, I don't want somebody to go home and think of the shitty thing I did that day. So I had a similar experience. I went to CVS and it was taking so long at the pharmacy. And I had to sit there and go, I'm not going to be the reason this girl feels even worse at her job today. Even though I wanted to be like, dude, what is going on? Like, how long does this take? But clearly it's not about me. And we all just live in this world where we think everything is about us all the time, good or bad. It really is just so important to like do the little things for people. And the smallest acts of kindness help so incredibly much with people. I totally understand that. And it's hard to take that into consideration too, when you're so in your head and when you're, in that
anger or in that, moment, it's like all about me and how I feel. And I'm just stuck there and I'm just so angry, and to let that monster just manifest.
Yep. And hindsight is 2020, like I've had a friend lash out before, and I knew none of it was personal. And I had to remind myself, like, I've been there too when I've been in a relationship that was on thin ice. I remember how I treated people and people gave me the grace and compassion. So now it's my turn to do the same. And, just stuff like that. And one question I like asking a lot of people is there a specific character that you channel in your hard times?
Well, I'm kind of going to answer that question in a sort of I'm going to kind of go around the block here.
Yeah.
When I discovered that little grifter in the first play, America, and when I discovered the pain that she was in, And it was a dark comedy, but there was a lot of darkness to it. When I discovered the pain that she was in, I think I was 22 years old, and I discovered how to filter my pain into her and through her. Mm. And as I've played these characters along the way, most people know me like for Gilmore Girls, but the fact of the matter is I've played a ton of different characters in, lots of procedural crime dramas and hospital dramas and whatever like that. But also through the 2 movies that I did that I'm very, very proud of. Sally, the drummer who had been raped by her stepfather and used everything she had put it into her drums. And Gloria, the young pregnant girl living in Reno. We filmed it in Napa and Reno. It was a great experience, and how lonely she felt. And some of the other characters that I've played, a lot of dark and tortured ones, truly. Mm-hmm. God, I played a murderer, a girl who cut herself and then killed her friend and this man and herself, and because she was in so much pain. And NCIS, where I played this girl who was so desperate for her next high that she snorted heroin out of her brother's intestines. I've played some very, very dark characters, and living through them, as I teach young kids, I often ask, why do you want to be an actor? Why are you an actor? What is it about acting? And a lot of them say a different version of basically the same thing. I like to step into somebody else's shoes. And for me, that means I get to take all of this stuff that's in my well, mm-hmm. not just my well of, joy, but there's a well of sadness and pain and torture. And I get to take that and pour it into a character and essentially work it out one step at a time. It's like make believe, but with real feelings, and to be able to create these characters that are real, true. And that's what I think about when I think about, my career and my life as an actor is being able to sort of exorcise so much of that stuff that's in that well. Mm-hmm. And so now when I'm in pain, I don't really think about any of those characters per se. I think about Monkey, and I take care of her, and I let her take care of me. And she's very sensitive. This is why she's my service animal. She knows when I'm about to have a panic attack, and she barks at me in my face. And she also gives me this very odd look. And when I see it on her face, I realize, and I need to take action. Mm-hmm. I've had them since I was 5 years old, and I very, very clearly remember. I have a photographic kind of memory, that's how things is visually. And I remember very, very clearly the first one I had when I was 5. I describe it in my book, and in the closet and the coat hanger. And she knows. And so I'm either, I got to take a pill, or I've got to breathe, or I've got to go get in the closet, or I have to remove myself from whatever stimuli might be causing it. And so she's basically, I'm looking at her right now.
Yeah.
So cozy in her favorite blanket.
What's like the first sign for you when you're like, this is a panic attack? Because some people, I remember my first panic attack, I thought I was dying. I literally thought I was dying. And it feels like your body is leaving you in a sense, and you have no idea which way is up. And I'm like, I just need everything off of me right now. And, a panic attack looks different for a lot of people sometimes. Sometimes you can't even tell someone's having one.
Yeah, for physicality for me is such that I start to get really cold. Mm-hmm. But it's weird, the kind of cold. I can't describe it. It's not cold to my bones, but it's like
inside
my face, like my face turned, like it's really cold. The blood drains from my face and my cranium, and I start to shake. My heart rate starts to shoot way up. Mm-hmm. And I start to find that even taking in a breath is difficult for me. And the worst of it is when my brain starts to create really irrational thoughts, and not suicidal, but like end of the world thoughts, like the bottom of everything, the worst of the everything, just the darkest darkness. I have an irrational fear of the unknown, and it manifests when I'm in absolute pitch black darkness. I can't do it.
No, neither can I.
I can't be out on a boat and be dropped into the middle of the ocean and not know what's underneath me. I can't do it.
You'd never get me on a boat, period. It's never happening.
Besides the fact that I get super car sick and boat sick.
Same, me too.
But also just fear of what's going to come next. Mm-hmm. And so that darkest place in the world, that's when I know a panic attack is really, really bad, is when I get to that place and I feel like there's just nothing left. There's nothing left.
My depression has gotten like that before, where that's when I know it's really bad, when I'm like, and this is so very vulnerable for me but it was like, it's not that I want to die. It's that I need this part of me to die. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And
do you ever get suicidal?
I mean, I've definitely felt like I need, like, this is when I need to like call on my friends. And, I've definitely had bouts. Like, I went to outpatient therapy in my late 20s and I called my sister and I was like, I don't know I said, I don't want to live anymore. I'm only alive basically for my family and my friends and my dogs. I'm not living for me. And I had to really make the decision to live for me again. And so I never was suicidal, but more so just like, how on earth can I go on? Like, I didn't want to end my life, but I didn't want to start it either.
Yeah.
And so that's a really hard place to be. And even to talk about makes me, like you said, I think of that girl and I want to hold her and I want to tell her, like, you have so much worth and you don't even know how amazing your life is about to get. And I think a lot of it for me always stemmed from my self-worth. I never had the self-worth. And whether that was what I took in growing up or in school or relationships, when I got my self-worth is when my life began.
I've never been suicidal either, not truly suicidal, but about as close to it as I can describe is, and I think this maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, what you were sort of hinting at. Mm-hmm. I've been at times in my life where I've lost the will to live. Mm-hmm. I am not going to take that next step and take my life. And I know that I will never do that. Right. I just know it. But I have had times where I've completely lost the will to live. And that's when I was involuntarily put into the mental hospital. And it was sweet. As you've seen Gilmore Girls millions of times, Liza and I used to be very, very close friends. And our friendship kind of dissolved. I think she got to the point where she just couldn't handle what, the stuff I was going through. My father had just died and Alexis and I had just broke up. And I think it just became too much for her. And I don't blame her. But during those 3 days, I spent 3 days in my house. I couldn't drink water. I couldn't eat a thing. At one point, I woke up and there were like 5 paramedics standing in my bedroom. And I was so scared because I wasn't answering my phone and they thought that I had killed myself. And Paul Adelstein, who was Liza's husband, during that time, he showed up for me. He came and he sat with me for hours and hours at a time. And just because he had been there, he knew what I was going through. And he sat with me and he talked to me and he tried to get me to eat. And so he and my very dear friend, Anthony, they finally convinced me and Jack to go to Cedar Sinai. Anthony is not a touchy-feely person, and he stayed in the waiting room while Paul sat back with me for hours in the hallway on a gurney, waiting for a mental health doctor, a psychiatrist, to be able to find the time to speak with me. And so he sat on one side of me and she sat on the other side of me. And she said, she asked me if I was suicidal. And I said, no. And she asked me a number of questions regarding my mental health. And what I did with the giveaway was, she said, then how are you feeling? And I said, I have no will to live. And she said, okay, well, based on our conversation, and Paul just held my hand like such a sweetheart, his friend. I almost said sweet fart. Sweet friend heart. He said, well, Miss Cole, we're going to take this decision out of your hands. And I said, okay. Thank God I had Jack with me. I was scared. And they didn't give me a room. I was in a freaking emergency room behind a curtain on a gurney. And I lay there all night. And I was so afraid. I was so lonely and afraid. And this is when my friendship with Liza was breaking apart. And this is after my dad. And this is days after Alexis, just out of the blue, just left. His mother died a month before, and he was on tour, and he came back, and we were sitting on my bed, and we were about to leave for Hawaii the next day. And he just got this look in his eyes, and he just left. I remember when my dad was dying and he came to visit, he was recording a record in Austin, and I was at the VA hospital right outside of Austin, Temple, Texas. And after I said goodbye to my father for the very last time, I was with Alexis, and I was crying and crying and crying. And he said, what are you most afraid of right now? And I said, I'm afraid I'm going to turn around and you're going to be gone. He said, that will never, ever, ever happen. And then one day it happened just like that. And I never heard from him again. And it was devastating.
Yeah.
It was like my whole world just caved in, and I lost every shred of will to live. And that's when I said, I'm never going to go back to a place like this ever again. And I haven't. And now I replace that, what I fill that hole with now in my soul, my heart is taking care of other people. And that's what brings me. And I'm not sure I could have done that if I had continued my life as an actor. And as great as it was being on set and making the kind of money that I used to make, and getting to work as an actor, I don't think that my life was as fulfilling as it absolutely is now, to be able to be such an important force in children's lives, affect as many children as I can, and to help them tell their stories, and to share my own with them, and to help them understand their stuff. Right. Sometimes I know what somebody's going through, and I give them scenes that'll maybe trigger it a little bit. And this one particular boy, I gave him a scene, and I knew. And he was 13. I gave him we were working on a scene, and I said, okay, I want you to imagine like you're in the hallway at school, and there's a water fountain, and you see this person. I don't care if it's a boy or if it's a girl, whatever it is to you, you see this person, at the water fountain, and your anticipation of what you're going to say as you approach them, or if you're going to say something. And it related to the scene that we were working on. And so then a week went by, and he had another one-on-one lesson at my house. And he said, hey, can I talk to you about something? I said, of course. Remember that scene we were working on last week? And do you remember when you said if it's a boy or if it's a girl? And I said, yeah. And he said, what if it's a boy? And I said, what if it is a boy? Well, what does that mean? And I said, honey, what do you think it means? It means, well, maybe I'm bi. And I said, maybe so. I don't know. He said, but I still want to have a baby, and I still think I have to get married. And I said, why do you think you have to get married? That's important to a woman. And he said, well, because that's what's expected of me. And I said, well, what if that could change with your honesty? And he said, well, I still want to have a baby. And I said, sweetie, you can have a baby with anybody you want to have a baby with. Bring a baby into this world to give love, or you adopt. I said, things are changing all the time. Things are possible. Everything's possible now. And so, you get to decide what you want, what love looks like for you. And so as the time went on, he started to discover that he's 100% gay. He finally told his parents. He started living his life the way he wanted to. God, his acting changed. Right. His happiness level changed. God, to this day, he's just, he graduated from huge college. He's living in a big, awesome city, doing just what he loves, in love with this awesome fellow. And he's getting to live his best life. And that's like one of those instances. And I love that, like, you had essentially no
parent figure looking out for you ever, and a lot of trauma from your family. And I love that your way of giving back is to be that figure for somebody else in a way, and to show them like they are loved, they're not alone, they are seen, they are heard. And I just think that's really beautiful that you turned your pain into something positive, as cheesy as that sounds.
It's weird. Whenever I'm going through an episode of fear or depression or just angst, and I have class and I'm teaching class, I have no idea how I'm capable of doing this. But what I can do is I can check it at the door, walk into class, and sometimes I can be very vulnerable. I mean, I'm always vulnerable with them. I always tell them I'm not willing to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do first, whether it's doing a scene or crying. I act with them, and I allow myself to be as vulnerable, wide open, without putting them in any sort of dangerous position. But sometimes I'm able to just say, hey, listen, you all, I've had a really rough day.
Right.
I'm just going to be straight with you. That's not going to change what we're going to do in here. But sometimes it's easy. It's great to say it out loud, and it helps. But I'm able to check it at the door and do my job as a coach and as a leader. And I think that's the universe or God, or, I'm not a Christian, but I definitely believe, as you read from the deer and stuff, I do believe in the power of the universe and something beyond this mortal coil. And
same.
And I'm very grateful for the ability to walk in there and do what I need to do, no matter what I'm feeling. And I think she's a big part of it, Monkey, to allow me to do that.
Yeah. Shelly, you have been so incredibly generous with your time. I mean, I can't even believe that time is like, I could sit here and talk to you forever, and you've just been so giving with everything. I'd like to ask everybody, because a lot of people, like these tangible things that they could implement in their daily life. So with panic attacks, with trauma, the cycles of abuse that you have dealt with, what is the best piece of advice you've either gotten for your mental health, or one that you would give for somebody that is experiencing what you've experienced? Or, what would you say to somebody who feels so completely alone? And like, what would you have said to yourself back then?
Yeah, this is actually a slogan that's used for people who are dealing with suicide and trauma. It gets better. I have come to learn that that's true. And I've talked to a lot of kids who have had suicidal thoughts and have attempted suicide. I had a couple of students who had attempted suicide a couple of times. And what we did in that class, we made a class around it. And with their permission and their parents' permission, we had a roundtable discussion about it. And we talked about what led up to it. And they told their, and then we made this video, much like the Amanda Todd video that she made. And she talked about her story and her journey, where she told her story through these cards before she killed herself. Oh. And she's one of the suicide letters in the play we did. And we talked about this, and then we made this video. We made this sort of suicide awareness video, all of us. And it was a healing thing. And the thing that I would say, if I could say it to my little girl self, I would say, it gets better. And I promise you that it does. And I think that, I don't know, as cheesy as it might sound, or if maybe it doesn't, it just seems like a little blanket that people just say it gets better, but it does.
Yeah, I second that, because again, in those hard moments, I look back, I was 27 when I went to outpatient therapy, and now I'm 32, and it has gotten better. It's gotten a lot better. And my dogs are still here. I have a beautiful nephew. I have amazing friends, my family, and I can't imagine if I would have missed out on any of that.
And when we're stuck in the middle of, and especially, I can say that more now at 51, because I've lived through that darkness and come out of it so many times that I know that I'll get to the other side of it eventually.
Right.
Those periods of darkness get further and further apart. But as a youth, sometimes I remember it, and I know that kids go through it. it's hard. It's like sometimes almost even impossible to know that there's anything else. I remember feeling like there's nothing else. Like the spots of darkness were so close together so often. And I think of this young girl, Amanda Todd, who took her life because of being bullied and telling her story through these cards, and flipping the cards. And she just told it through that. And when I first saw this YouTube video, this was years ago, I just cried for her because I thought about how sad it must feel to be that lonely, to just feel so alone that there's nothing else. And I wish I could just go and hold her and just say, let me hold your hand for a while.
Right.
Let me promise you that it will get better. I promise, honey. That's what
Yeah. Well, Shelly, we've had an incredible conversation. Like I was so sucked into it. I feel like I let time just like completely pass. And, some episodes on here, it's so like heavy TV based where we just talk about TV shows for so long. And then other episodes, it's like when people are willing to get vulnerable, I'm so appreciative because again, to somebody who's feeling alone and listens to this, they're not going to feel alone anymore. And that's so badly what we've needed in our younger selves before. So I just really, really appreciate everything that you have said and the time you've given to me and how beautifully honest you've been and just so kind. You'll be the person in my story for the day of like how nice you were. So I just so appreciate it.
I mean, you facilitated the platform for it, and this is all you, really.
Oh, thank you. Like, I'm gonna try not to cry because I mean, you have just been seriously so amazing, and I know after these types of conversations, for me, I have to watch like 10 episodes of Friends to decompress.
Favorite episode
of Friends?
If you had to choose one.
The pilot.
Favorite Gilmore Girls episode, if you had to choose one.
Oh gosh, I think it's when Logan and Rory, I think it's the You Jump, I Jump Jack.
Ooh, it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yes, I have that t-shirt. I love it.
But also I would have to say too, her first day at Chilton. I mean, it's kind of iconic when Lorelai is like, in her short shorts and little shirt and takes her to a prep school. Yeah. What about you? What was your favorite episode of Gilmore Girls?
Well, my favorite one to film was the spring break episode. My last, and it was a freaking blast. Yeah. But I like the Bracebridge dinner. I think that was a really cool one. And honestly, I haven't watched all of it.
Yeah. That's okay. Did you watch the revival?
I watched some of it. I was supposed to be in it. They called me immediately and said, you're definitely going to be in it. Mm-hmm. But then they realized that Teal Redman completely off the grid.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I heard from somebody that she might be selling cars in like Minnesota or Texas or something.
Really?
No interest in being anywhere near this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. I think maybe Texas or something. I don't know. Anyway, she has no interest in reviving any of that part of her life. And so obviously it doesn't really make sense to have.
Oh, no. I mean, I think you could have been there at Chilton. I mean, Chad Michael Murray didn't do it, which I thought was so annoying. The fan base has seemed to really fall in love with the idea of Madeline and Robert together because Nick and I have become such good friends and we do these fan fests together. And the fans have this kind of Madeline and Robert kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, I think if Madeline were anywhere, it would be with the Life and Death Brigade for sure.
Yeah. Stumble upon, look what I did.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'd be
elevated.
Yes.
In a French way of some sort.
Mm-hmm. So Modern Family is your go-to. It's what you watch at night. What's your favorite Modern Family episode?
Oh, I really like the one where they're on the lake. And the reason I like that one so much is because I love it when they're all together in one place. Mm-hmm. My second favorite, because I think it's hilarious, I think it's called 5 Minutes. And it's the one where Mitch and Cam
are at the airport.
And they take an ambulance. and they have no memory of whatever. Oh, it's hilarious.
It's so good. It's the writing of that show. I was late to the party with Modern Family. I didn't watch it till it was already off the air, and I started watching it during COVID. And then I became obsessed. It became a part of my ritual for the day. Yeah. I would make my lunch, sit down and watch Modern Family, and I would either be laughing or crying by the time my roommate came home. And I mean, like you said, nobody else, Julie Bowen, the scene where she is like at the roller rink.
Yeah.
And she's like literally having this moment and this whole monologue while she's making a hot dog, pouring a drink on roller skates. I was like, that is so impressive.
She does that well. She does that all the time in the kitchen. Also, mm-hmm. She's so good at using props and mm-hmm. dialogue and opening the refrigerator and doing all that stuff. That's a great example. That particular episode is a great example of how good she is at that stuff. Will and Grace used to be my mm-hmm. number one go-to. And Megan Mullally is a genius actor.
Oh, yeah.
She can use her props, hold for laughter, use her props. I mean, she's brilliant with props.
Yeah.
And comedy. And oh my God, that show, that was my go-to show for so many years. And I also love The Vampire Diaries.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
I'm definitely team Ian Somerhalder.
I never watched Vampire Diaries.
But one time I was auditioning for this TV show called Cold Case. Mm-hmm. And it was the Bruce Springsteen episode. And they cast me as the female like romantic lead. And they had 3 guys come in and do a chemistry read with me where I had to kiss each one of them, like kiss. And Stefan, the Paul Wesley was one of those guys. And so I had to completely make out with Paul Wesley in front of like a director and a camera and people. He didn't get the job, but this other guy did. But that was weird. And then one time I shared a trailer with Ian Somerhalder. We were doing this little film called How to Make Love to a Woman. And he and I shared a trailer because it was a very low budget film. And he is one of the sweetest people in the world. Let's have some french fries. I'm buying, blah, blah, blah. I've had so many amazing experiences. And I'm so grateful.
Oh, I love that. And I am very happy for you. And I just love, like, even when you talk about something you love, you just like lit up and like got so excited. And I just love how you can be there and also be, you know, on the other side of the coin too, and like get real and get vulnerable. And I just really appreciate your authenticity.
You know, this was a really like intense conversation for the most part about mm-hmm. like mental health and emotional health. And yes, I can definitely be very vulnerable. But the thing that you haven't really gotten to experience is that I'm a really fun person and I'm actually quite funny.
No, I believe it. I believe it. Well, anybody who like loves Modern Family and Will and Grace clearly knows their comedy.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to choose my favorite characters on that show, it's a toss up between Cam and Phil. I don't know.
Absolutely. I agree. It's so, and the kids were great when they were younger. As they got older, it was like, I don't know about this, but I can watch Cam when he's not even talking. He's being funny. Your eyes are just drawn to him and he's so funny. Hilarious.
He's a straight man who plays that character so brilliantly well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just like Will and Grace. I mean, Will is straight and he plays that character incredible. And it's so funny to tie this into Friends. I got to go to a live taping of Will and Grace, the reboot, because my friend is a good friend with Sean Hayes. And so we got to go and Deborah Messing comes out and was like, okay, so if you guys have been watching the show, we have a pickup with my love interest. And I was like, no, Katie, oh my God. And I like grabbed her. She's like, you're okay. Because out walks David Schwimmer and then Jimmy Burrows. And I'm watching Will and Grace.
Oh my God.
I literally just had tears streaming down my face. And I was trying to be like, you know, silent because you can't talk at all in these tapings and make a single sound. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching Will and Grace with Ross from Friends, with Jimmy Burrows. And I was like, okay. Like
I really liked the character he played.
I loved them together. I thought they had such good chemistry on that show.
But I mean, of course, they don't end up together, but whatever. Okay. All right. So my boyfriend is calling me. And
Okay. Yes. Oh my gosh. We've gone for almost 2 hours. So
wait, I'm so happy. And I'm so happy I got here in time. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much again. Everyone should check out Blue Highways. And I just adore you. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your day. Give Monkey a hug for me and Jack.
Okay. Cool. Bye.
Bye, Shelly.
So much fun.
Thank you. Bye.